Hi everyone, Jean Humbrecht here, criminal and traffic defense attorney in Manassas, Virginia. Today I'm here talking with Brad McConnell, who is a business law attorney. He's going to be talking to us about some of the dangers of entering contracts during this shutdown period. And we're going to be discussing some things to keep in mind if people are looking into doing side hustles, opening a business, and also to watch out for a lot of scams that are going on out there. So Brad, if you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Jean, for having me. I know we're doubling up on attorneys here, and we'll try to keep it as non-attorney-ish as possible. Brad McConnell, Northern Virginia Business Law is my firm. I'm a solo practitioner. I do just business/corporate law. So I do just transactional work and contract work for businesses of all sizes, small businesses all the way up to literally billion-dollar business. So my focus is on everything from like brand new startups, so, creating their LLC operating agreement, employment agreements, buy-sell agreements among founders, customer contracts, financing deals, whether it's a bank line or my original background is in venture capital. So like equity deals is a big part of what I do. So, but it's all business focused and general business advice, which is kind of general business advice and contracts are sort of where the two meet for today's thing, because that's sort of the area of interest, I think, right now.
So Brad, can you tell us a little bit about how you got the idea for today's topic?
Sure. Yeah, we actually, it came to me probably about I think it was last week sometime. I was talking to a potential referral about a contract that she was in. I actually had to do with like point of sale purchase stuff. This is up in Philadelphia, and so someone had asked me to talk to her, and I don't think I had an actual solution for her, but it brought up, she's in a contract that was very one-sided, and she was trying to find a way out of it. And quite frankly, that's not my forte. My forte is trying to keep you out of those contracts and not have to deal with a litigator, although I'm happy to help people try to get out of those contracts too. But and there have been a couple other situations where I'm seeing people in sort of bad situations. They bought a business without knowing everything about it. They've sold a business and not really thought through all the stuff that's in it. People winding up in long-term contracts. People who didn't really look through the terms that sounded good. People, the salesman was very convincing, and then it turns out they got in the contract and it was not what they were expecting and how to get out of it. And so these are always problems, always issues, but I think there's more potential for it now because there are people who are, this situation, this pandemic is changing everything. It's making everything is exaggerated. So people are, there's a kind of three different groups. There's the people who are, their business is, in big trouble because they can't talk to customers and they are desperate to get new leads or new access to online marketing or whatever it might be, and just because they just need to find a solution. There are also people who are excited because there's new opportunities, quite frankly, especially, a lot of people who are already in this space or who are facilitating that space have all kinds of new opportunities maybe. And then the third people are the sort of the side hustle, which you alluded to. The people who've been like working from home for the last couple of months going, you know what, I want to make this my full-time gig, or this other thing I was doing, which was just sort of an idea. I found some time to get it started, so let's get doing that. And in all of these situations, sort of that common denominator is there's a potential to get outside your comfort zone and outside your the area, and which makes it easier to make mistakes. So trying to sort of maybe figure out where some of those mistakes might be made and hopefully avoid them. So there's my long answer to your question.
I think I lost you at the end of that last sentence when you said easier to make mistakes.
Well, because the problem is if you are one of the people I was talking to recently admitted that they got into this contract because they delegated responsibility to like an office manager. They didn't really look at it, and as people are overwhelmed, whether it's because they're just trying to do tons of different things, or they don't know something about it and they're too busy doing the one thing, so they don't have time to look at all the minutia. There is more potential if you're not paying close attention, because it's not a plan. If your planning changes, you're much more likely to do it in a methodical method, methodical fashion. But if you are reacting, you're much more likely to go, okay, sounds good, what's the worst that can happen? And as you and I are used to, as attorneys, the worst that could happen is what we worry about every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess let's deal with a couple of these things individually. So the first thing is, if you are working remotely, which a lot of us are going to be doing, even when things do open back up, I'm sure this is going to continue for a while. If you're working remotely and you have to change your business practices, you have to, do some things that you didn't do before. What are some things that people should look out for, in terms of maybe using new software or having their staff work remotely?
Right. Well, there's a bunch of issues. One of the first ones that came to mind in this context was, there are a lot of businesses, that deal with, their marketing. Maybe it's all in person. It's all face to face. It's all, I know I have clients that are in like that do roofing and other construction kind of stuff, and they're used to, they are working on a house and they canvass the neighborhood. That's just how they do business, and that's just not an option right now. And a lot of people, other sales types who are used to like going into people's offices, going door to door, they can't do that. So they're trying to find new ways. And there's a million. I mean, I am bombarded every day on Facebook with how to get new clients, using this surefire marketing technique. And how to, I'm going to build your website and make you $1 million, or I'm going to do your social marketing and make $1 million. And I am sure many of them are very legitimate and very good. But I just want to caution people to not just sort of grab at straws and just say, well, that sounds fine, I'll sign up for it. And then you find out you're in some kind of 4-year agreement where you're sharing some high percentage of your profits, or, you just have outlays that you don't even, for someone who doesn't actually do anything productive for you. So these are these are things I worry about in terms of, as a contract lawyer, like winding up in long-term situations that you can't get out of, for someone that's not performing for you.
Okay, well, that's actually very interesting that you say that. That actually brought up a couple questions in my head. So first of all, have you noticed an increase in people getting trapped in these contracts during the shutdown, or has this been going on for a while?
I don't know that I've specifically seen anything along these lines yet. I've seen these things, over the years. My concern is that, you're already seeing a lot, on the news and stuff about a lot of sort of fraudulent things about whether it's masks or, special magical cleaning supplies. And some of these things are legitimate and good, and some of them I don't know. And the problem is, once again, you need to do your due diligence, right? You need to actually, which is why, you need to be talking to someone. It doesn't have to be a lawyer. It can be your accountant. It can be your business advisor. It can be, quite frankly, it can be your sister-in-law. It can be whoever, someone who you trust. People if you are in networking groups, to try to find out something about, someone who is selling something that may be very useful to you and may be very helpful to you. But taking some time to look into it, see if it's the right fit, see if it's the right price, see if it's the right kind of terms under a contract, before you jump into it, because there is going to be more. Anytime there's a crisis, there's going to be more fraud. And it's just trying to, but helping, I want to try to get ahead of that to some extent, because there are going to be more desperate people. So there's going to be more people targeting those desperate people. So I want to sort of, part of it's a caution of, if there's a great deal that you have to sign up in the next 20 minutes, it's probably not a great deal. If you don't have time to go and look into it, talk to your advisors, talk to your peer group, talk to your networking group, then it's probably the wrong decision to make. And maybe it would have been perfect, but it's less likely to be so. So I just want people to try to, and the other part of this is, there is nothing wrong or embarrassing with having to admit to your friends that, things are tough right now. Things are difficult, because they are difficult for just about everybody. So it's not something, people will often have to sort of put the, that stiff upper lip, and I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to talk about it with anyone because, it's just what I got to do. Don't do that. Don't just talk to somebody. And I say, it doesn't have to be your lawyer. It can be somebody who you trust, just to bounce ideas off of. mean, we can talk a little. I want to talk a little bit about actual contractual stuff and things to worry about. But the first issue though is a due diligence thing, which is a big part of what, as a corporate transactional lawyer, looking into what are we even talking about here, is sort of one of the first step.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you mentioned fraud and scams. Have you seen any scams in particular going on right now, trying to take advantage of people that are desperate? Because you and I, we're lawyers. We're still working, maybe not in the exact same way or in the same place, or but we're still working, and a lot of people are not working at all and don't have any income coming in. So these people, obviously, we need money to pay your bills. So what should they be watching for specifically in terms of scams? Is it these because I've seen a lot of advertisements for these online job opportunities. I don't click on them, but I see a lot of things. Is that something that people need to watch out for?
Well, I mean, and those kind of things are always around, right? I mean, there's always people who, you drive down the street and you see someone has stapled something, earn $100 a week, $500 a week from home, in your pajamas. And now those are all over Facebook, and those are all over on the internet and all that stuff. I mean, I would question a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's sure. And that's the kind of thing, it's more likely that people are going to jump on that sort of stuff. And then they're going to start looking for, and this is a kind of area where I would always be concerned if there's any kind of initial outlay of money, that's always a red flag, right? If it's like, if you have to pay money in order to make money, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, but it's certainly a tick against, in that sort of like, well, is this, here's the positives and here are the negatives. That's something that would make me concerned, because if someone in any contractual relationship, in any business relationship, if you got to look at what both sides are promising and what both sides have to deliver, and if one side doesn't deliver, what rights does the other side have? If you don't do the thing you promised to do, I shouldn't have to pay you, or I should have to pay you less. But so that's a sort of basic contract stuff. And if you are paying money out front in order to hopefully get some money later on, that's probably, I mean, yes, I know any kind of business has startup costs, and if it's legitimate startup costs, that's fine. But sometimes people will prey on on business owners, and if it's hey, I can get you. I mean, I'm not going to say that like all these like Uber Eats are scams, because they're not. I mean, it's a legitimate company, but there are, I mean, if people will say like, well, it's kind of like Uber Eats, what I'm going to do for you, but I'm going to take 30% of, or some percentage of your business. And I'm not saying one way or another about, whether, sort of, I'm making value judgments on those kind of delivery services, but it's like, yeah, I'm going to take X percentage of all of your business, but I'm going to funnel new customers to you or something like that. And you wind up in a contract where you're now stuck with these people. And it may be broader than, it may be part of all of your revenue, not even the people they bring to you. It's not that I've seen a lot of these specifically related to it, but I'm seeing scams, and I'm worried that people are going to wind up with it, because I have dealt with people. The problem is I've had numerous people over the last couple of years who've come to me and said, oh yeah, I bought this business, and it turns out this is bad, and this was bad, and this was bad. And I'll look at their agreement. It's like, you could try to sue them for fraud, but there's not a lot we can do otherwise, because the contract was very bad, and it's like, they didn't have to really promise to deliver, and you still had to promise to pay. So I'm worried about people winding up in more of those situations, just because this is fertile ground for that, because people will be, especially, just like in the sort of the internet world, there's a million companies that are going to, do your SEO and do all your marketing. And some of them are great. And some of them didn't do this 2 months ago, but it sounds good. And if they can just sort of blanket the world, they'll find, some people who are willing to pay them some money, give them a credit card, and they can just go ahead and do it. And, they're cheaper than one of these other companies that I've heard of. That's the kind of thing that I'm worried about. I'm not that I'm necessarily seeing it yet, but just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean that people aren't doing it. It just means they haven't talked to me about it.
Right. Have you noticed, or are you suspecting that a lot of people are taking on side hustles? And when I say side hustle, I mean doing something besides your full-time job to make some extra money. You know,
Yeah.
there's companies that sell, you know, cosmetics and skincare, and companies that sell cooking tools, and I mean, there are all sorts of things. Do you think people are jumping on into doing more of that now because they can presumably do it from home?
I think that's absolutely. I mean, I don't have, I don't have numbers to back all this up. I just have, people coming, and a lot of the calls I'm getting are new business setups of one sort or another. And sometimes it's, sometimes it's someone who's just they're doing a spin-off of a government contracting company, and they're gonna, because they can now qualify as service disabled or minority owned or something else. But now it's happening because people maybe not be quite as busy, and they're like, well, let's get this thing set up so we're ready to go in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it is like, yeah, well, I can work from home now, and by the way, I'm going to turn this other consulting I do, or I make something, I do some kind of crafty thing where I sell something I make. I do handmade, hand carved furniture or something like that. And I think that's maybe one of the good things that's coming out of this. There people are like, oh, maybe I can do something. I'll do it on the side, and maybe if it becomes good business for me, that's something that I can supplement my income, and I can have fun doing it. And who knows, maybe it can be my full-time job. The concern I have with these people is like, that's great, that's awesome, but you still have to treat it like a real job, and like a real business, which means you need to think through. It's like, how are you running it? Are you setting up a single member LLC, or are there two partners who are starting this business? And who cares if it's if you're making $100 a week or something like that? But what if it goes well, and now you're fighting over who owns it and who has rights to control it? Do you have insurance? Maybe you need insurance. If you are selling something or doing a service, or having someone come to your house, you may have insurance needs that you can ignore it if you want to, and maybe you'll be fine. But you're risking a lot by not. So it's like, just because it's it's a little something I do on the side doesn't mean you shouldn't treat it like an actual business. And it's not expensive. I mean, even if you just go online and and get some online insurance and some online legal help, I'm not necessarily recommending those, but even if you want to do it the cheapest way possible, at least do something, right? At least treat it like something real. Open a bank account, sign things in the name of that business. Try to limit your liability, and if you can afford it, get some actual professional help. Get an accountant to help you. Get a lawyer to help you. Get an actual tax person to help you out, and get the right kind. The right kind of insurance person to help you out. Because if you're just making some T-shirts, like a couple a week, I don't know, but once you start doing like 50 or 100 for a whole bunch of customers, all of a sudden that's now actually real business, right? It's not just, you're not just doing something for fun out of your garage. You're actually doing business. And you don't want to wind up in trouble because you blew the tax laws, or you blew the, or you're liable for something, or you're personally liable for, some office space that you rented and didn't really think about it. There's all kinds of things that could happen that you could get into trouble because you're like, oh, this was fun, and what's the worst that could happen? And it's like, and as I said before, the worst that could happen could be worse than you would be comfortable with.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you brought that up. And before I get to my next point, I guess I just need to tell everybody that the information, what we're talking about today, this is all for informational purposes. It's not legal
advice, and you have not become either of our clients by watching this video. If you are our client, that's great, but yeah, this is not. Sorry.
No, that's okay. See, both of us need to chime in right there. Information, not legal advice. But these points are just really important for everybody to know. And I'm a business owner, and Brad, you're a business owner, and and even as attorneys in the beginning, it's difficult, and we probably have our own checklists for things that we know that we needed to do, and then based on the amount of money that you have to start up, it depends on what you do first and what you don't.
Right.
What would you, being a business law attorney and dealing with contracts, what would you suggest is most important for people to think about, even if they don't think they're going to make any money from this, and they're just doing it for fun. What do you think is the most important for people to think about when starting any new business, at least to keep in their mind?
Right. That's a great question. The first issue you're going to have is, as I say, if it's more than just something tiny, then you want to think about creating some kind of corporation or a limited liability company, just because you have at least the potential to protect your personal assets. You can deal with your accounting, your expenses and stuff like that much more easily through an entity like that. And it allows you to have some kind of personal protection. So whether, and quite frankly, the easiest thing, if it's just you doing your own business, a single member LLC is very easy. It's very easy to file with the Commonwealth of Virginia. You can do it online, and boom, you're good to go. You can open up a bank account, and then have people sign, when they pay your business. And if you sign up, if you're going to take credit card, whether it's just like one of the easy to use. I mean, everyone now. I mean, every roadside fruit stand now takes credit cards. So if you're gonna, I take LawPay because they specifically deal with lawyers. But it's one of those things where setting up an entity, getting your tax ID number, getting a bank account, figuring out how you're going to accept payment, whether it's just cash or whether it's whether you're going to accept credit cards because it's necessary, and then use that stuff. When people pay you, put it into your bank, not into your personal bank. Put it just put it into your business bank account, and then distribute it to yourself. It's just easier, to show at the end of the year when your accountant, or even if you're doing it by yourself, you want to be able to track that stuff because you don't want to get in trouble for blowing tax laws by mistake. I mean, you don't want to do it intentionally either, but it's just it. And then if you make sure any contracts you sign, whether it's you're renting some space in a farmer's market, or you have an office or something, do everything certainly that you're allowed to, that someone doesn't insist on having you personally sign it. Sign everything in the name of your business, and to run everything as a real business. And if you can start hiring employees, now you got to start thinking about what your employment agreements look like. If you're going to sign a commercial lease, I would recommend having someone help you look at that, because you want to see what kind of long-term impact that might have. A lot of them require personal guarantees, and unfortunately, I've seen people like, well, my business isn't going well, so I'm just going to shut it down. It's like, yeah, that's great, except you personally owe 4 more years on a lease, so that's there's the worst that could happen. So, but just thinking about setting up an actual company. It's just it's not expensive, and it's if it's more than as we say, de minimis. If it's more than just like a little bit of money you're doing, it's probably worthwhile.
Now, if I recall, the expenses associated with all these things are very minimal, and I don't say that lightly. Because when you're starting a business, every dollar, every penny counts.
Right.
And if you've lost your job right now, or if somebody in your house lost a job, I mean, yeah, you might say, well, I'm not going to pay for this or pay for that. But in the grand scheme of things, paying $50 or $75 or something for a couple of these processes, would be worth it, just to make sure that you start your company the right way, right?
Right. Well, what I try to do with any new, it's a very good point. And yeah, as a small business owner, I am reluctant. I am now starting to focus, like personally, I'm starting to now work on my online, getting my Facebook page and redoing my web page, and realizing I need to start getting stuff out there, marketing purposes. Because honestly, I will admit I neglected that. I was just, I was focusing on in-person networking, and just getting referrals from people. And I didn't want to spend the money, and didn't have time to focus on it. So what I try on a similar vein, if I've got new company startups, I said, listen, these are the things we need to do today. I try to give them a roadmap. I said, listen, we need to do, we need to file this new LLC, and you need to do the bank account, all that kind of basic stuff. If it's just one person, we don't have to worry about a lot of other stuff. Or, if you're not hiring employees, we're not going to create employment agreements for you, because we don't need to spend that money, because money will be tight. Maybe we should do a customer contract, depending on, what kind of stuff you're doing. And if you need that kind of thing, because you want to stay out of trouble, maybe worth investing an hour or two of legal time on that. But I try to stage things. It's like, if you don't have to worry about it, then you don't have to spend the money on it now. But some of these things, if you don't worry about, if you don't spend an hour or two now and you try to fix it a year from now or 5 years from now, it may be a lot more expensive and a lot harder, and not just like proportionate to, well, now I'm making lots of money so I can afford. It's like, yeah, but if you could have spent, a couple $100 then, or thousands of dollars to try to fix something, and by the way, now you also owe fines and penalties to the IRS, and or someone else is suing you over something, and it's like, it's just a mess. So I try to help guide my clients into, let's do this now. Let's worry about this thing later, but you really should. And sometimes I'll tell people, if you're setting up a single member LLC, you don't have to pay me. You can go do that. I mean, if you have more time on your hands, you can just do that, and I'll tell you how to do it, and you don't have to pay me for it. Come back to me when you have something that you need my expertise, because I'd rather do that. I don't need to squeeze blood out of a stone, right? It's not worth it. I'd rather have someone who's going to come back to me when they have actual need of my services. But yeah, but if you can talk to someone, and maybe it's just your accountant saying, hey, what do I need to do now? If you don't have an accountant, or someone who who started a business, and say, hey, what do I need to do? What's some of the things that you got into trouble? And there's lots of articles about that. I'm going to try to put a few more of them out myself. They're sort of in my drafts folder. But just look through that kind of stuff. And a lot of that's just sort of trying to figure out what the issues are down the road. And it's like trying to prioritize, just like anything, whether it's your marketing, you're getting a lease, or whatever it is, the business expenses that you need. No one likes to spend money unless, if it's going to get you in a better position that you can be earning money, or you can sleep better at night because you're in a better situation, I think it's always valuable. So whether we're in a pandemic or not, it just gets more accelerated because of this. So.
Right. And I think I would think that right now some things might be easier in terms of starting a business. Like when I started, I don't think I had the ability to set up a bank account online, or to, bank account that didn't have monthly fees. And now I see that a lot of banks, you can do this from home just because you're able to do so many things from home. So in some ways it might be a good time to do it if you are going through the appropriate steps and thinking it through and not rushing into it, because you have the time, and with technology you might be able to do more than you could have before. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a weird new world. I mean, I think we were talking about this earlier. It's like, I honestly, I didn't know what Zoom was 2 months ago. And I mean, everything I did was in person. Lawyers are notoriously conservative about this kind of stuff. I would meet people in coffee shops or Panera or something like that too, just to, especially like for an initial consultation, because I like to talk to people and make sure I'm the right person to help them, because I don't want to, if what they're looking for is not something that I do, I don't want to, waste their time. But, but I've had to, all of a sudden, I mean, every networking meeting, every, like board meeting or something like that is now on a Zoom call. So I've had to learn this, and it's like, this is actually kind of, it can be doing stuff online and doing stuff, through video chats and the like. It's certainly efficient from the point of view of, you can do them back to back to back, and you don't have to be like, okay, I got a 10 o'clock meeting, now I got to drive from Manassas into Fairfax for my next meeting, and then I'm back out in Haymarket, and then I'm in Tysons, and like, well, how do I coordinate these meetings? And it's like, doesn't really matter now, and people are happy to do it. People who might not have done it before. So between the sort of the virtual meetings that allow you to instantly be wherever, and the fact that that so many people are now doing things, people who weren't doing stuff online, which is sort of the flip side of that. Everyone's desperately trying to figure out how to do stuff online, but now they're doing it online. So they are now actually making it easier for people like us to access their goods or services in a way that we might not have been before. I mean, I don't step foot in a bank. I have no reason to, unless I'm getting cash. I'm going to an ATM machine. I mean, I'm depositing my checks on my phone, and and that's been going on since before this. I mean, everything is a little different, and so it is much easier to be a entrepreneur. I mean, I've one of the things I've been kind of amazed by is all of these business owners who I've got to meet through the Prince William Chamber, or the Fauquier Chamber, or the Haymarket Gainesville Business Association, or whatever the group is. I mean, the sheer number of people who are, even if they have an office somewhere, they're working from home. They've got either an office in their house, or they're sitting on the dining room table or something like that. People can just work from wherever, and it's now becoming. I mean, honestly, I used to have to say, well, I work from home, but now it's like everybody works from home. So it's just like, it's not even a thing, really. I mean, at some point, I may get some office space just so I don't have to be, that close to my refrigerator at home. But it's just a thing. Everything is virtual. Everything is remote. I mean, I think we're going to see. I think that the trend is much more towards even people still working for big businesses, working from home. I think there's going to be a lot more of that because people have seen, even with kids underfoot, people can be productive working from home. Now, maybe the people will decide, yeah, I still like the congeniality. I like going to an office somewhere because I just like that. I like to be able to bounce ideas off people instantly. But I think there's going to be more of this, especially people in sort of, salesy kind of positions, that they may be like, what, I don't need to drive into Tyson's Corner to sit on phone calls and then go out and meet people in their offices. I can do it, I can do the same thing sitting in my comfy chair, in Haymarket, Virginia, like me. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to advise? I guess two questions that I was thinking about advising people in general about contracts and things to look for. But I also did want to get back to starting a business before we move on to that. You mentioned LLC a few times. I know what that is.
Right.
Can you just explain to people the importance of incorporating? Because they might think, I'm not going to be a corporation. I'm not going to be as big as Disney. I don't need to call myself a corporation. Right. It's not that simple. Right. It's for protecting your legal assets. Right.
Yeah. I am tied for literally the smallest form of corporation. I mean, I'm not a corporation. I'm a professional limited liability company. But you and I are like tied for the smallest size, incorporated business in America. It's a very large tie for first place in that role. But yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of, and I've given an entire hour-long presentation on LLCs, which I'm not going to go into here, but I'm trying to address what is a very good question about, whether it's a corporation, which most people have heard of, like a Disney or a Microsoft or something like that, or a limited liability company, which are a relatively new thing. I mean, honestly, when I started practice back in 1995, LLCs were not particularly popular or common. They were just coming into. In fact, I think all 50 states and the District of Columbia had just sort of passed laws that allowed them to even exist. So they're relatively new thing, and that the difference is, a corporation. More people are sort of aware of what they are. Where you have, it's an entity, and apparently it's also a person now with rights, but that it is separate from the individuals who own it. The shareholders are the people who own stock in a company. And the company can have officers, president and vice president and secretary, treasurer, all kinds of, and they have a board of directors. I mean, people are more familiar with that. But the main point of it is it's a separate entity that has its own liabilities. So that just because you are a shareholder or an officer of that company, you are not personally responsible for the debts, the obligations, the injuries caused by that company. Now, that's not saying you're guaranteed to be insulated, but that's the default position. Is as long as you do things properly, you are protected, and you are not. You don't have liability. If you were just going into business with yourself and you're selling something and someone sues you for millions of dollars and you're not through a company, then that's all you. You have your personal. You maybe have to declare personal bankruptcy. LLCs are similar to corporations. It's the same point of isolating your liability. They are more like partnerships, though. They come from partnership law. And without going into too much detail on that, basically you have, instead of shareholders, you have members. And then you don't usually have like a board of directors. You can have officers. You can have a board. You can do things that are very corporation-like, but you can also run them more like a partnership where, you have 2 of you or 3 of you or 4 of you, you all vote together and you give each other, you decide, how much authority each person has, and do we have to vote in a majority on certain things, and maybe it's a unanimous on other things. But the whole point of it is you want to limit your financial liabilities by creating this and operating it, according to the law, and operating it as an actual company. And as I say, even if it's one person can be you can create a one-person LLC. It's very easy to deal with from a tax point of view, from a business point of view. It's like $100 to file with the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you've got to up that filing every year, which is like $25. It's not expensive, but it can be the beginnings of creating that protection for you as a business. And if you want to do it through LegalZoom or something like that, that's fine too. Better to do that than not do anything. What I tell people is when you're adding a second person, if you're two people going into business, that's where you're more likely to want some professional advice, just because I will tell you, I've seen a lot of 2-person and 3-person businesses, down the road when things are going badly, where, people are fighting or someone's being forced out, or someone's going through a divorce. And there's all kinds of things that can happen. Those are the kind of things that when I put my lawyer hat on, it's like, well, let's think about what you might want to do to protect against these bad things that could happen in the future. But yeah, setting up some kind of business, setting some kind of entity is usually a good idea. And it doesn't have to be, the cost is not necessarily particularly expensive, especially if it's a simple relationship. So I recommend that. That was the second part. The first part, you want me to address the other part about the sort of the issues in contracts? I can try to do that in like 2 minutes or.
Well, I'm actually glad you brought up the partner thing, because I wanted to ask about that. Can you just explain to people, in not an hour-long conversation about what they need to watch out for if they are thinking about going into business with somebody, because it might look attractive at first. This is my friend. I've known him forever. My costs are going to be cut in half. We can share the cost of a staff. What do people need to keep in mind when entering these contracts, and how can they get themselves into trouble? Should each partner have a separate attorney?
Sure. The safest thing is, I was just had a phone call this morning with someone who's going to hire me to there's 3 people who are going into, they're already in business, and they're adding a real estate element to have a facility. Each of them already has their own counsel, but they decided they really wanted someone to represent the LLC. So we're addressing all. That's the safest. That's the best way to do it. In practicality, you can't always do that. If you have it, if you're making a good attorney should be representing, if you're representing the business, you try to do your best to say, well, these are the pluses and minuses for each of you. These are the risks. Ideally everyone has their own counsel. That's not, in a micro business, in a really small business, that's not necessarily going to happen. But at least you want to have someone who can talk through what the issues are. Because, and as you point out, the early stages when you're just setting up a business, you're reluctant to make the analogy to a marriage, but it's not dissimilar. The big difference is, getting a prenup may be a little more likely to derail your happiness and joy, whereas setting up a good operating agreement is what should be the expectation. And it's not because it's not that I don't trust you, I think you're going to cheat on me, or I'm going to cheat on you, I don't want you to give my money. It's like this is what we need to lay out our expectations. This is how we expect to run the business, and if these bad things happen, if someone needs to get kicked out, or something happens to somebody, this is how we're going to buy you out, force you out, do these kind of things. Because I've seen many business where, there's 3 partners who they were best friends in, college or something like that. And they set up this great IT consulting business and making lots of money. And then one of the guys decided, this is actually a thing that happened, but one of the guys decided that he really wanted to focus on his golf game. He really has no interest, but he was entitled to 1/3 of all of the profits of that business. And they had not built in how they could there was no right to get rid of them. So, it was just a drain on the business. And yes, they could pay themselves more in salary, but that's not an ideal way to do it. So that's the kind of thing. At the beginning, nobody's sure, who's going to be the bad guy, right? Because first of all, there's two issues. One, there's no actual money on the table, right? It's like you hope the company's worth millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands or thousands of dollars, but there's no actual money. So it's much easier to negotiate in good faith about, well, is it 33% or do I get 40% and you get, it's much easier because it's all like pretend money. It's monopoly money at this point. And the other thing is you don't know, are you going to be the one that decides they want to focus on their golf game, or are you going to be the one who dies or gets permanently disabled or goes through a divorce? And I mean, because those are the kind of situations where, if someone gets a divorce, now all of a sudden, does the ex-spouse now own, there were 3 of you and now there's 4 of you, but 2 of you are splitting a third of the company, and one of them is openly antagonistic towards the rest of you. And good luck getting a unanimous vote on something. That's just not a thing that's going to happen. So thinking through, what are you going to do in certain significant life changes? Or if you decide you want to sell the business. I mean, that may be the first time they realize, oh wait, I need to get, there's 8 of us and I have to get all of us to agree to sell the business. And it's like, oh, well, one of them is just being difficult or doesn't think it's good enough. And I have no ability to sell the company, which what the rest of us think is great, is a great plan. Or they want to get financing. We think that's a great terms, but the other guy says no. So these are the kind of things you want to make sure that you have an appropriate, governance, appropriate threshold. What do you do with things if you don't all agree? And you can't necessarily address all of them. And sometimes people will just say, you know what, we'll just figure it out, and that's fine. But at least you've decided you're going to figure it out, rather than making rather than only finding out, 3 years down the line that, oh, we could have addressed that. So it's like you can't address everything. But if you can address it, better to do it, early on rather than later.
Those are some really good points, because you never know what's going to happen in life. I mean, it could be something bad. It could be something good for you. I mean, maybe you get a dream job offer that you want, or maybe your spouse transferred across the country and you can't continue doing it anymore. And you have no idea those things are going to happen in your future. You could be single when you enter the contract, and then when you want to leave, you have 3 kids that are, in high school, and you have to move across. You never know what's going to happen. So if you talk to somebody, at the very least, even if you don't retain an attorney, if you at least talk to somebody about, things to keep in mind, I guess that's the most important thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because you never know. And then, if you're going to move, if you're the one moving across the country now, and it's like, well, okay, so I need you to buy out my 1/3 of the company. We're like, well, what's that? How are we going to value that? Is it the book value, which is almost nothing? Is it the fair market value? How do we determine that? Do we have to get an appraiser? Do we have to sell the business? Do we have to find someone to buy into the business? And what is that going to look like? Much easier to figure that in the abstract than because if this is a profitable business that you have to move across the country, perhaps you should be entitled to, 1/3 of the business if you're one of the 3 partners. But then the other issue is, well, how do you pay that out? Do I have to do you have to pay me cash the day I leave? Do I pay that out over a year or 4 years? Or how do we, so deciding those things in the abstract is a much better idea, because then you can agree that those are fair, as opposed to, it's like, well, hey, I need my money now. And it's like, well, I don't have money, and the other guys are like, well, we don't have money now. You're just walking away, maybe with good reason, and we still like you, but you're walking away. I don't have that kind of cash. So now you're negotiating, later on over actual money and how quickly you're going to get paid, which is always, or at least almost always, harder to do. So.
That was a lot of information.
I know. I have a tendency to just blah, 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 blah. It's like, I can just, whatever. I can talk about any of these issues for way too long.
I had ideas in my head, but you brought up things that I didn't even think about, problems that could arise with businesses. And that's, of course, what you do and you see it. We do very different areas of law. So yeah, that's why you're here today, to help inform everybody of the things. And I guess
I have no understanding of what you do. That's what because people think, when people are like, oh, you're a lawyer, they understand what you do a lot better than they know what I do, because, people will be like, and I'm like, I have no idea. If my life depended on me, going to court to defend somebody, I would die, and so would my client, would be in big trouble, because I have no idea what you do. I would be completely incompetent. And I don't think people necessarily realize how specialized the law is. You're not going to get your pediatrician to do your heart surgery. That would probably be a bad idea. Although my pediatrician wife would be much more likely to do a successful heart surgery probably than me defending someone in a criminal case. But that's a whole nother thing. So.
No, I mean, I know exactly what you mean. I only do criminal and traffic defense. If somebody came to me with a bankruptcy issue or a contract issue, of course, I'd, send them to you. But yeah, I mean, I sometimes not even a basic knowledge. I mean, law is so specific. That's why contract law, I mean, criminal defense is so specific.
Yes.
Contract law is so specific. That's why people need to talk to somebody like you, because all the ins and outs. And I mean, I have a general knowledge because I went to law school just like all the other lawyers did. But no, I'm not the person to ask about these things. It's really, I'm glad you brought that up. It's important for anybody, whatever your legal issue is, to go to somebody that specializes, not, well, can't use the word specialized, but that deals with it. It's one of the things that they generally
experienced in that area.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, that's what, and people will say, it's like, I'm having an issue with my ex-husband, or it's like, I'll be happy to refer you to someone who does family law. It's like, I want to do a will. It's like, I could do my own will, but I'm not going to do your will because I wouldn't be particularly good at it. So it's like, I mean, I'm happy to have people ask me if I do something, and I will tell them very bluntly, it's like, it's not my thing. I can help you with this or that, but I can't do that other thing. I will be happy to try to, if I know a good person to refer you to, I'll be more than happy to help you find that person. But I don't want to do something I'm not good at. And there are too many people, not just in the law, but who will like sort of pretend they know what they're doing. And if you have too broad of an experience, I worry that the level of experience is perhaps somewhat limited in certainly many of those areas. So that's why, people like you who will focus on this one thing, basically, criminal defense and, and traffic stuff, it's like, that's how you get good at it, because you do it over and over and over again. So you could answer a question. I could spend 3 hours trying to look something up, and you're like, well, I know that off the top of my head, so it's not hard. So that's why I prefer to give it to the people who actually know what they're doing, because they can often just deal with it in no time.
Yeah, and that's very important, and not just law, but anything. But yeah, it is very important for people to keep that in mind. If you have a legal issue, you don't just call any lawyer. If your best friend's a lawyer, or if you know someone who's a lawyer, you can ask them. I mean, you can start with them, but they most likely will be able to refer you to somebody if it's something that they cannot do. Right.
And that's often better to start with someone who's not, an expert. At least they hopefully will send you in the right direction. So. All right.
Well, which is why I wanted to talk to you about contracts, because that's not what I do at all. Is there anything else that you think it's important for people to know, whether it's during the coronavirus outbreak when we're all stuck at home, or just in general?
I sort of come back to the same issue with, I would encourage people. I know people are just sort of, people are used to just having papers put in front of them and they sign them and whatever. It's like, well, that's just, it's just the thing I had to sign. And sometimes that's fine, and sometimes it's not fine. I encourage people to at least know what's in the contracts they're signing. What are they committing to? How much money are they committing to? And it's like, if it's important enough, maybe getting someone to review it. And I also encourage my clients to, have their own customer contracts, just because it's better to have someone sign your agreement than you sign theirs. At least you know what's in it. But it all comes back to be careful what you're agreeing to, be careful what you're signing. I'm not trying to don't be paranoid about it, but, at least, take a beat and try to understand, what's going on. I'm not saying you need to have your lawyer review your Verizon contract or or the Apple terms of service. It's like you're going to do that whether you like it or not. But but other things, there are other things where at least, even if you're not in a position to negotiate it, I like people to be in a position to understand it. I've dealt with this, like people like buying franchise and stuff like that. And that's an area of law where it's like you don't necessarily have a lot of room to negotiate a lot of the terms, but I want you to understand what you're getting into. So spend a couple hours like looking at what it is that you're committing to make sure you're comfortable with that, because different people have different tolerance levels and things they worry about. So understanding it becomes a big part of it. So.
And a very basic example of that, I think, would be signing, a rental lease agreement, like for just an apartment, not even a business, because you need to know when do you give them notice if you're going to leave. If you don't give them notice before 60 days, they're going to charge you for X number more months, But if you read the contract and you know what's in there, you know what your obligations are as much as what the other person's obligations are,
right.
And to have those things in mind.
Right. But here's the one, and that's a really good point. And one of the issues that people don't necessarily think about, especially when they're small business owners, is there's a lot more sort of consumer protections for the individual, where something might, quite frankly, be illegal for them to try to slip into, whether it's a lease or something like that. That they have no, or how much interest they can charge, before it becomes usury or something like that. Those kind of restrictions are often that may be applicable to you in your individual capacity, may not be applicable at all in your business as a business owner. So you may be sort of just used to, well, I always sign this kind of thing. It's like, oh yeah, but you are protected by the law in ways that you may not be protected as a business owner. So you need to be more careful, because that's just how we've decided. It's like, well, you're a business owner and you can be more sophisticated. We're not going to necessarily try to protect you. Which I think is not unreasonable, but it's just something that people don't necessarily think about, that there may not be the same kind of protections that you just rely on. You don't even realize it. That's just the kind of thing. It's like, well, it's there. I don't have to worry about it, right? So it's just, I know that my credit card can only charge me so much interest, and they can only do this kind of thing. But that's because there are laws that protect you. So.
That's actually a very good point too, which is why it's so important for people to probably talk with you before they enter contracts or start businesses. Now, if people do want to reach you, can you tell them how to get in touch with you? And also, can you tell them, what it is that you do? You told us a lot about contracts.
Right.
What is it that you do for people?
Yeah. So, and I can put my links and stuff in the comments and wherever we post this. So Northern Virginia Business Law is my solo practice. You can reach me at B. McConnell at Nova Biz Law, which is NOVABIZLAW, but we'll put it in the comments below. And call me. My cell phone number is my phone number, and we'll put that in there too. But yeah, so I deal with people at all stages, right? So, I have people who call me. It's like, hey, I'm starting a new business. What do I need to do? And then I have people who are like, I'm trying to get myself set up for. I'm working with another client that's working on a $3 million like venture financing. So it's like all kinds of different. And I have a $1 billion client that I do their customer contracts for. So it's like, but basically, so any kind of business transaction. Now I don't do real estate purchase and sales. I will do people's leases, but I don't do if it's actually like a real estate specific thing, I have some lovely people who I like to refer people to because they're very good at it. And I represent a bunch of government contractors. I don't deal with like prime contractors with their government contracts, just because it's a very specialized area. But I represent government contractors in their corporate work, because they are also businesses that have contracts and employees and all kinds of, and leases and all kinds of stuff, regular business things. So, what I generally I kind of see myself as sort of an outsourced in-house counsel, because that's what I've done for 25 years. Most of my clients don't have in-house attorneys. Some of them do. But I just tell people, just give me a call. I'd rather talk to someone for 5 minutes and say, yeah, don't worry about this, or just do this, or you know what, we need to spend, a half hour or an hour putting something together. But just have a 5-minute call and not worry about that, because I can field those questions and then figure out if there's, some actual work to get done. So basically any kind of contracts, any kind of transactional stuff, and buying and selling a business is one of those areas where it doesn't have to, if you're going to buy or sell your business, don't just like, well, I'll just sign an agreement. I got a business broker and they gave me a 1-page agreement. And I've seen those kind of horror shows. And people don't realize what they're getting into. And they're not buying what they thought they were buying, or they're not getting what they thought they were getting when they were selling. But there are ways to do it efficiently and with limited legal hours for small businesses. Now, for bigger businesses, you spend more hours because there's more money involved, right? There's more things that could go wrong. We try to scale any kind of work we do. Try to scale to the size of the transaction, because it's you have to do more things for bigger things. Someone wants to go down more rabbit holes. So,
but it's better to spend the 5-10 minutes, an hour in the beginning, just making sure you know all your obligations to avoid spending a lot more time and a lot more money down the road, right?
You always have, I always tell people, you have your most leverage before any money has changed hands or before your signature is on something. Because if you can walk away, someone is much more likely to give on something that you are concerned about. You know, if they're making promises and say, oh yeah, we're going to get you this many customers and stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay, that sounds great. Let's put that in the contract. And if you don't get to that, then I have the ability to terminate the contract. And I say, well, no, but it's like, well, okay, well, what is it that you're really promising them? You know, so that's the kind of thing. It's like, if you have that leverage before you've signed up, and if they can't, or they're not willing to, you know, put the money where their mouth is, then that says something about the business. And maybe there's a compromise position where it's like, well, you know, I know I promised you 100, but if you can't get 50, then you can walk away or something. So that's when you have the leverage, not a, hey, you're not doing a very good job. It's like, well, sorry, you got the contract, so you know you got to keep paying me. And that's not a good basis for an ongoing relationship. Better to get those things out of the way at the beginning,
Right?
Before you sign.
Right. Well, on that note, I'm gonna let you end it, Brad. Anything else you want to say?
No, I'll yeah, and talk for another hour. No,
within a minute, less than a minute's time.
no, but thank you, Gene, for having me. And I'm actually working on sort of a companion piece. I hope to get up in the next, maybe today, maybe over the weekend. You know, talking about some of these, you know, sort of crisis-related contractual issues. I'll put a link to it when it's up. But if you want to follow me on Facebook, I'm starting to add more stuff in there. I started doing some stuff when I was dealing with some of the payroll protection plan loans, which are kind of a mess. I'm still trying to figure those out too. I'm getting more guidance from other sources as well as that goes through. But so yes, feel free to follow me on Facebook. Go check out my website if you want more information. But yeah, that's it.
Okay, so we'll make sure that we put all of Brad's contact information in the comments and on the event page. And anybody that's either watching this live or if you're watching the replay, you know, feel free to pop a question into the comments or reach out to either one of us, you know, for any question that you have, more information, or if you have you know, Brad, if you have a specific, you know, situation that you want to discuss. Or if there's something that we didn't discuss here that you have a question about. So just feel free to leave something in the comments. And Brad will put the links to his articles that he has written and any videos, because he has done some presentations on various aspects of contract law. So we'll put that stuff in the comments. And then Brad, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I really appreciate it. And this was very informative. I think everybody who watch this or will watch it is going to get a lot out of it. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, you have a good weekend.
All right. Bye-bye.